Welcome to this online roundtable co-organized by GlobalSkin and ESDR. My name is Yalcin Mamadov, and I'm Senior Advisor for Europe at GlobalSkin. Please let me remind you some housekeeping rules. Please be aware that the event is recorded. Please keep your microphones muted. If you forget doing it, we can manually do it for you for the smooth running of the event. The event will last 2 hours. The agenda will be described shortly, but I anticipate for questions and remarks that you might have. For the question and remarks, please use the online chat. And during the last part of the event, you will have possibility to raise the hand and ask questions. Shortly about ourselves and the goal of today's meeting. GlobalSkin, many of you know, is an international non-profit organization striving to create a world where people with dermatological conditions are healthy and fulfilled by elevating our patient community, by championing for a strong voice, and by uniting all our efforts to change the way the world sees dermatological diseases. We represent 256 members worldwide from 70 countries, representing 58 disease areas, and these numbers keep growing. Apparently, we are already 2,058 from yesterday. So these numbers keep growing. Sorry, I received a remark that you're not seeing the slides. Can you see them?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yes.
All right, very good. So the aim we are here today, as many of you might have heard about this EU discussion paper that has been published 1 year ago on January 2023, a scoping study on evidence to tackle high burden under-researched medical conditions, where skin and subcutaneous diseases were identified as one of the 12 therapeutic areas as high burden and under-researched. Our patient community participated and contributed to this study, and the following diseases were specifically named within that therapeutic area, high burden and under-researched classification, namely dermatitis, hidradenitis suppurativa, genital lichen sclerosus, and lichen planus. Notably, the dermatitis is among the most common health problems in Europe for which people contact their general practitioner. And as you can see, from these figures, dermatological research represent only 1% of the EU research funding, and it's mere 7% of the top funded disease. Like you can see the huge difference between the top ranked disease and the dermatological diseases. Oops. Now, allow me to pass the floor to the facilitator of the event representing ESDR, namely Andrea Segedi and Curtin Conrad. And I take the opportunity to thank the ESDR to join us in this initiative. Andrea, Curtin, the floor is yours.
So thanks, Yalcin. I actually wanted to have Eli, our current president, present quickly the ESDR, but I'll take over here and then give him the floor just before the first speaker. So my name is Curtin Conrad. I'm currently the Secretary Treasurer of the ESDR, and together with my colleague Andrea Segedi, also board member of the ESDR, we have the pleasure and the honor to actually facilitate this event. So why are we here? As Yalcin just said, medical research and innovation in general are absolutely essential for advancing therapeutic, diagnostic, and preventive approaches in general in medicine. And as you also have seen just now, dermatological research receives only about 1% of funding by the European Commission. And they've just published this paper on how to tackle actually these high burden under-researched diseases, among which really fall also dermatology. And despite this high impact that dermatology has, we only receive this 1% of the funding from the European Commission, which is about 10 times less than the highest ones. And actually it should be the other way around. I'm not saying you have to steal stuff from the nervous system, but dermatology in general, the diseases are highly accessible, so readily accessible. They are visual, they're visible, so which obviously has an impact on disease. On the same time, actually makes this research simpler and often also less costly. Thus, we could advance with such proof of principle studies in dermatology, actually medical research and the life of our patients all the time in a way which would be less costly, as mentioned. And that's why we're here to discuss this with the different stakeholders. So we have people from the European Commission, we have a patient representative, and we have researchers and doctors here to have this discussion. First, we have some presentations and we have a roundtable session afterwards. And with that, I'd like to hand over quickly to Eli, who will present the ESDR, so our society, and then he will get back to Andrea, who then starts facilitating the actual talks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Kardin, and good afternoon, everyone. It's really a great pleasure, a great honor for us to be part of this roundtable event. So the ESDR is the European Society for Dermatological Research. Next slide. And actually, if you could just advance the slide. Thank you. And so this is a society which was founded many years ago in 1970. Our aim is really to try to promote all aspects of science related to dermatology. And our ultimate goal is to improve the health of patients suffering from skin diseases. So this is really not science for the sake of science, but really science trying to promote a better ways to diagnose, treat, and even prevent skin diseases. And our three strategic pillars are really to try to advance science to education. So we have a quite large number of educational events throughout the year. We have a special focus on the next generation. And we are also trying in all of our activities to promote diversity and inclusiveness through networking. Next slide. So maybe I can advance this. So the society is European, but it is actually international as far as our membership is concerned, our activities are concerned. We are part of many international activities. We have an executive committee. Kardin is the secretary treasurer. Sabine, who is also present here, is our past president, and our president-elect is Enrico Soncoli. And we are, of course, also very much held by a large board, and Andrea is representative of the board, and she will co-facilitate the event. Next slide. And we are also very much held by a business office. Thomas Florestant is directing the office. Next slide. And finally, just to give you the whole picture, although our society is really very much focused on science and investigative dermatology, we have a large number of interfaces with many sister societies. And as such, we are a kind of a platform which hopefully will be instrumental in trying to promote the major goals of this roundtable, and actually kind of help promoting and circulating the major messages and tasks that will emerge from today's meeting toward all of our interactions with our sister societies. So that's it for the ESDR. And again, thank you very much, Yalcin and GlobalSkin, for putting together this very important event.
Thank you, Eli. I also would like to welcome everyone. My name is Andrea Szegedi. I am your second facilitator beside Gordon today. And let me go through the agenda of today's roundtable shortly. First, we will hear a video message from Stella Kyriakides, the European Commissioner. And then we will hear lectures first from Karin Feldman, who represents the Dutch Skin Association, then Jennifer Osteen, the CEO of the GlobalSkin, then Professor Matthias Augustin from Medical Center Hamburg, Professor Sabine Emming. She was the former president of the ESDR, as Ellie Sprecher already introduced her. Then comes Tina Taube. She's representing the European Federation of the Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations. Finally, the last lecturer will be Clément Evroux, who is representing the research services of the European Parliament. And at the end of the agenda, we are going to have a questions and answers session where we are waiting for your questions. And now let's start with the video message of Stella Kyriakides.
Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes in healthcare and health policy, the focus can be on the disease and not on the person. GlobalSkin's work is an important reminder that behind each diagnosis is a person. So I want to begin by thanking you for your vital work, and especially for your commitment to patients worldwide. I am delighted to play a part in today's important event. The skin is our body's largest organ. It is our primary protective barrier. It regulates temperature and safeguards against UV light, trauma, pathogens, and toxins. However, certain medical conditions affecting the skin find themselves too often outside of the collective awareness. This needs to change, and the European Commission is determined to play a major role in this effort. In 2023, we identified 4 skin diseases or conditions that impose a high burden on patients and which are under-researched. As a follow-up, the Health Cluster of Horizon Europe, our flagship research program, launched calls to address these conditions. The funding leverages technology, fosters collaborations and the exchange of data, informs policymakers, engages patients, and improves clinical guideline access. It will make a concrete difference to patients. We also support EU member states within the framework of the Healthier Together Non-Communicable Diseases Initiative. This initiative complements Europe's Beating Cancer Plan in helping member states to reduce the burden of these diseases, promote health equity, and implement a holistic approach to prevention and care. We also launched the Melkaya project to prevent melanoma, with a focus on children and adolescents and young adults. This project seeks to understand risk factors and determinants of melanoma so that we can improve prevention, diagnosis, and prognosis. In addition, evidence shows that the use of sunbeds significantly increases the risk of developing melanoma, especially at a younger age. And that is why we are preparing a recommendation to limit their use for cosmetic purposes. Ladies and gentlemen, let me assure you that we are determined to address under-prioritized skin diseases, and GlobalSkin is playing a key role in that effort. Your research, expertise, advocacy, and support are vital to patients. So I thank you again, and I count on your support and dedication to strive for a better future for everyone. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes...
Andrea, you're muted.
And now I would like to ask Karin Feldman. She's representing the Dutch Skin Association to give her lecture.
Thank you, Andrea, for this kind introduction. Dear all, I would like to tell something about the burden of disease, and I think that this first picture says it all. It's a picture from the collection of Bart Hess, the wearable collection, he calls it, and there are some other nice elements in this collection, and I advise you to watch the video afterwards, this discussion. It's called the Unwearable Collection, and to me it resembles the burden of patients with skin conditions. It resembles pain, it resembles well, that you feel that you look different from other people, and that it's social, there is also a social burden on skin diseases, because everybody looks at you and everybody thinks that you are different when you look not common as other people. Could I have the next slide, please, Yelchin? Well, who's talking? My name is Karin Veldman. I'm 54 years old and I'm a patient representative from the Netherlands. So English is not my native language. I'm not a native speaker. I represent the Dutch Skin Association, but I also represent ichthyosis on Dutch and European level. And I deal with an inflammatory skin disease myself, and I will tell more about this on the next slide. Well, if you see the picture of the baby in the crib, that's me. And I looked as a healthy baby in the beginning, but soon after birth, I turned red. And this was within a few days, and the doctor called it dermatitis. Well, I received treatments, and most of them didn't work. One that did work was applying a very strong steroid cream, but it had huge side effects. And because of the rareness of my disease, there was a huge delay in diagnosis. I received my diagnosis at the age of 39, and it was called Netherton syndrome. And this is a potentially life-threatening systemic disease, well, with elements of skin, but also other elements in it. Next slide, please. 1 in 8 people worldwide has to deal with skin diseases. This can be skin diseases that are small or only for a small body part, but also can have impact on the entire body and maybe also more than skin, but I will tell more about this in the next slides. GlobalSkin did a really good research project called the GRID, and Jennifer will tell more about this. Well, HS, or also called hidradenitis suppurativa, is one of the under-researched conditions in the study. And it's an immune disease that causes recurring boils in the folds of the skin. And it's mostly seen in armpits and on the groin or the stomach or buttock. Well, it's not an infection, what you should think, but it's an inflammatory disease, and it's often needs surgery, and has a high influence on the quality of life of people. It's mostly seen in women. It runs in the family often, and black skin seems to be more sensitive to develop HS, and it can be really, well, it has really big influence on the quality of your life, having to deal with all these inflammations all the time. Next slide, please. My colleague Sylvia, who is president of the Lichen Planus Association in the Netherlands, has shared her story with me. She has oral and vulval lichen planus, and she has told me it has a huge influence, for example, on eating and tasting things. And she's a really nice cook. She loves to cook, she loves to talk, but talking and eating is painful to her because her mouth is full of these inflammatory patches. And well, she was really late diagnosed. At least she knew about her diagnosis very late, because the healthcare professionals thought it wouldn't matter to her to tell her what her diagnosis was, because they could not help her. There was no cure. So why should you have to know you have a disease like this? And when she went to a gynecologist, because she had also vulval complaints, then she found out she had lichen planus. And Sylvia has told me that stress is really a trigger for her condition. So yes, this is of high influence for her, and it's also seen in male, well, but more in women. Next slide, please. I've also talked to Margriet, the president from the Lichen Sclerosis Foundation in the Netherlands. She has told me that lichen sclerosis, also a vulvar disease, is mostly seen in women, but also seen in men on the penis. That it's uncomfortable for people to have this condition, for example, to wear just your underwear, which is very common to everybody. Also, it can influence other clothes you wear, but it has also great influence on performing sports, having a sexual life. You always have to use ointments, and this can really damage your clothes or your furniture because you sit on your chair and you put the grease on your chair. It goes through your clothes. And it's really difficult for people to talk about this disease because they feel ashamed about their condition. And you don't talk about things that are inside your clothes or, well, it's very uncomfortable for people to talk about this intimate area. And I really love the patient representatives that make this more comfortable to talk about this. So next slide, please. As you can see, a skin disease has a huge impact on several aspects of life because of pain, itch, looking different, but also on social economic areas. It has a huge influence. To have a job, to look different in social context. Well, there are a lot of items on this slide. Yes, people might recognize that when they have to deal with a skin disease. Next slide, please. And from the discussions with my fellow patient representatives, we all thought that research is needed on, we would like to know why so many people have mental problems. Is there a relation with the skin disease? Is it because you look different, or is it, is there a relation to the inflammation on the skin? Is there also some kind of inflammation inside the body? Well, that's the next point that says, is it only skin? Mostly it is not. And we would like to know what is the pathway of our diseases? What is causing it? And can my skin disease lead to other comorbidities? For example, in my case, I have also thyroid problems and I have to deal with the Raynaud phenomenon when you have the really white fingers and arthritis. And people also want to know, is it running in my family and can I pass it on, or how can I prevent from passing it on? And we would like to know, go towards research that really provides us a treatment instead of trying things and being part of a trial and error. Also, the influence of lifestyle is important. Everybody's talking about lifestyle and preventing health problems. Well, we would like to know if it's also a case with skin conditions. And talking to Mirella from the HS Foundation in the Netherlands, she says, I would like to know if there's a relation between the microbiome and inflammation. So we already have a lot of questions from the Netherlands to everybody in this meeting today. Next slide, please. And I would like to conclude with my own story because everybody knows me as a smiling person who is always happy. But if I had to score my skin, I would give itch a 7 out of 10 because my skin is always very itchy. Pain, 8 out of 10 because you can see a lot of redness and inflammation on my skin in the picture on the left. and the pain and the itch causes me lack of sleep. So I score sleep 4 out of 10. And as I told before, it's not only my skin, but I also have other autoimmune disease. For example, my thyroid is slow, and I have a lot of infections that need treatment. I think every month I need to treat an infection of my skin or an infection of my lungs, well, other infections. There is no proper treatment at this time, and there's no cure. And this last year, I had a lot of skin infections that also caused me erysipelas, are also called cellulitis. And I had lymphedema in my legs. And I've learned myself to disconnect from my body, to work as a patient representative, because I don't always want to feel the pain, but I also want to have fun. And I really enjoy my work. And I would like to conclude this story with, well, most people think that it's only skin and you don't die from a skin disease. Well, some of my fellow patients have already died, and they were younger than me. So, well, this gives me something to think about, but I plan to age. So, and I hope this wish might come true. And the final conclusion is on the last slide. For my priority is to do more research to the connection with mental health, because I read stories from people with skin conditions that really are so insecure about how their body looks, and some people suffer from anxiety and depression. And I read many stories in which people say, well, I wish I could get rid of this body. Maybe I should think about suicide, or I don't know how to solve problems with my skin. And I think this really needs high priority on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen, for this very touching and emotional lecture. And then I would like to ask Jennifer Austin, the CEO of the GlobalSkin, to present her lecture.
Thank you, Andrea. So I'm the GlobalSkin CEO, and I'm really pleased to be presenting to you today. Next slide, please. The first thing I want to touch on is 2 quotes that came directly from the scoping study that was done by the European Commission on these high-burden, under-resourced and under-researched conditions. The first is that they believe that there needs to be a quantifying of the impact of these diseases on the individuals. And they also refer to the global burden of disease, and that it is not sufficient because it doesn't include the social and economic consequences of the condition on the patient, and doesn't measure or take into account the personal costs, including discrimination and exclusion. Next slide. So it's actually because of these types of gaps that GlobalSkin began the GRID research project in 2017. And if you can go back 1 slide, please. So the GRID project is around measuring the true impact of skin diseases from the patient perspective on their lives. And that includes all kinds of aspects of their lives. And coming out of this project, we have developed a new patient-reported outcomes measure called PRID. And that stands for Patient-Reported Impact of Dermatological Diseases. And through that measure, we are gathering patient-derived data globally. Yelchin, can we just, so.
It moves automatically, sorry.
That's okay. So the next slide just has my quick acknowledgement to the research team that's been working on this for the past 7 years. So this has been led by GlobalSkin with University of Hamburg and Cardiff University. One of our co-lead researchers, Professor Matthias Augustin, will actually be presenting today in this session. So next slide. And so far in this research to gather the patient impact, we have had more than 5,600 patients participate, and that has been throughout the process of developing the measure. and then more recently in using and testing the measure. So that's quite a significant number and probably unprecedented in many disease areas, certainly unprecedented in dermatology. Next. When we started the research, we asked patients to explain what the impacts of their diseases were, and we collected 263 shared impacts that go across all skin diseases. You can see the different types of impacts here. And so it's not just physical, as we know, and as we heard from Karen, there's also the social, there's daily life responsibilities, psychological is huge, and of course there are also financial impacts. So the measure that we've developed will be able to measure all of these. Next. And as part of the development of the measure, we conducted a Delphi study. So often when measures are developed after the items have been generated, the researchers will determine which are the items or questions that end up in the final measure. But what we did was we went to patients from around the world to help us prioritize and to refine those 263 items. And through that process, we interacted with over 1,100 patients in 90 diseases across dermatology in 65 countries. We were able to reduce that questionnaire down to 27 questions. It's continued to go through a refinement process, and it's now down to 16 questions. But this is what makes this measure so special, that so many patients were involved in actually prioritizing what's most meaningful to them. Next. So taking data out or deriving data from that Delphi study, we had a significant number of participants in Europe. So we had nearly 500 participants across 45 dermatological conditions and 24 countries across 6 languages. And we received excellent feedback from patients that participated in the Delphi because they really felt validated by being able to answer these questions that were very meaningful and understandable to them, that hit on issues that were important in their lives. You can go to the JEADV and see our fairly recently published article on this. On the next slide, I'm going to show you just a bit of the data. So these are the 45 dermatological conditions. And on the next slide, these are the 24 European countries. So this is what was represented in the Delphi data. Next. And these are the top 20 impacts identified by the European patients that participated in the Delphi study. So you can just have a quick look at that. And on the next slide, there are a few insights. You can see on the pie chart that 65% of the impacts identified that were most important to patients were actually psychological. So this has a huge impact when you're able to measure this, because Karen provided us with patient stories, which are really important, but having that backed up by data makes the patient stories even more compelling with policymakers and decision makers. That would include when people are trying to get access to new therapies and to ensure that they're provided to them on an affordable basis. We need to be able to measure the impact. And it's also important to policy making in healthcare systems. And so this 65% on mental health impacts tells us that we need to be prioritizing this in healthcare systems and to make the treatment of patients more holistic, not just about their physical symptoms. Next slide, please. This is the final version of PRID. As I said, it's 16 questions, and it asks questions in 4 different domains, where you can see here on the green: physical, life responsibilities, psychological, and social. Next slide. So we were the first ones to use the PRID measure, and we did that with our patient community. Many of you in this roundtable today that are participating were part of this study with your patients, and for that we are so grateful. We had over 4,000 patients in 96 countries, and 102 dermatological diseases participate in this study. And you can see the list of all of the different types of questions that we asked. So this is a huge amount of patient experience data that we can use, and we need to be doing more of this so that we can measure what it's like to live with skin diseases, so we can prioritize these diseases and health systems. But you can see that PRID is not the only measure that we use. We used a number of other quite well-known measures But we also asked questions also about how long did it take you to get diagnosed? And we asked demographics questions so we can understand, even within Europe, the disparities between health systems. So we are very busy crunching and analyzing a lot of data. Next slide, please. And these are the next steps. So we have collected the patient responses that concluded at the end of December. And now we are deep into the analysis with our researchers at University of Hamburg. And some of the data will be used to help further validate the PRID measure so that this can be used widely in dermatology and to validate the different language versions. We did do this study in 17 languages. And we will be publishing on this, and then we will be launching the PRID measure during the EADV later this year. And then you can see there's another track of work here on extracting insights. This is what our patient organizations really need. They need to be able to take their patient stories and what they know about their diseases and back it up with data so that they can share the quantitative story of living with skin diseases. And so we plan to share that with our patient organizations so they can do advocacy work at the national level and regional level, while GlobalSkin is also doing it at the international level. And we are doing that with the World Health Organization and others to raise awareness about the true impact of skin diseases. Next slide. These are the journal articles that we have produced so far and that we've published on the GRID project. So feel free to use the QR code and go have a look. Next slide. And I just want to conclude with some policy recommendations. These are not mine, they're not GlobalSkin's, but this is around research. And this came actually directly from the scoping study that the European Commission put together around what to do in terms of achieving more equitable research for these high burden under-researched diseases. And I hope that this will be part of the discussion today because these are tangible things that we could be pushing for together as a community. So creating and stimulating large research networks was one of the steps that was recommended. Finding more opportunities for funding to create more research around these diseases. Stimulate researcher mobility, make incentives sufficiently accessible to do research on these medical conditions. And you could see in the slides that Yelchin shared off the top how little money is invested in the European Union on skin diseases. And this really does need to change. So we need to have, it needs to be financially viable for people to do research, and we need to increase the incentives to do so. And then the final one is to stimulate the organization of specific conferences in the medical areas. And I know there are organizations that are already having conferences. The ESDR certainly does this every year. There was 2 years ago, and there will be another one this year, the World Congress on Rare Skin Diseases, which was convened by the ERN Skin. This is wonderful, but we need to have more and more frequent meetings and conferences where we're sharing information and prioritizing together. And we need support to do that. And we need support from the European Commission to help make this a possibility. I will conclude there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jennifer. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions about this nice study. And the next lecturer will be Professor Matthias Augustin, who is the director of the Institute for Health Services Research at the Medical Center Hamburg.
Yes, thank you very much, dear audience. Thank you for the invitation. For me, it's a pleasure to talk to you. And while I'm try to take over the screen, Joachim, can you try to give it to me? Yes. I will already introduce you into the topic, because talking about economics is something essential, of course, in healthcare discussions, but it doesn't mean that I will talk about costs only, because economics means to have a balance and to also work between the costs and also benefits, what is beneficial to those who pay something. And so doing this, I'm a health economist and I'm focusing on benefit research. And second, I'm a dermatologist and I work in clinic, which you may see now. Now, if it comes to the burden of skin disease, there has been a meeting in the European Parliament just 4 months ago, and we were happy enough to present the burden of skin diseases, chronic inflammatory skin diseases, to an audience there. And one of the facets was to convince the decision makers on the European level that skin diseases matter. And I think we did a fair job there. And so now we may focus more on the rare skin diseases with some particular problems that arise, some particular burden also that we have heard impressively in the previous two publications. If it comes about the economic burden of skin disease or economic burden in general, we need to know that we measure different types of burden, which are called costs in economics. The direct costs coming from the paying the medical costs or non-medical costs, like out-of-pocket costs. Then we have the indirect costs resulting from productivity losses, the loss of human capital due to the skin conditions. And then we have a big third column, which always is forgotten, and this is the so-called intangible costs, those that we cannot measure in terms of monetary units. And this is the suffering from a disease, quality of life losses, and the long-term accumulation of life cause impairment. And so the perspectives on this are different. Payers look at the medical costs, patients at the non-medical out-of-pocket costs. The national economy, of course, is interested in the indirect costs and losses of productivity and patients, but we all as a society should especially be aware of the burden and the suffering of the patients. And so the societal perspective that I was asked to talk about encompasses all I've shown. This is the overall perspective which neglects any of these cost perspectives. The question now is on a European level, which are the direct, indirect, and intangible costs of skin diseases in Europe? This is my topic. And I address this referring to these three components in a minute. And the first step is, of course, to understand the literature and the publications and the data which have been done. And to be honest, the literature, the data are quite inconsistent. And we have started to address this some years ago already with malignant melanoma, one of the skin cancers, which are really serious and life-threatening. But even this severe disease just resulted in 6 publications on the economic burden in Europe. And they came from different countries, so this needs to be adjusted. But this is one of the challenges we face in Europe. I just want to name you this. When we want to talk about Europe in general, or the EU in general, it's puzzling because we have different inflation rates over time by country. We have different current inflation rates. We have different costs of living. We have different purchasing power in the countries, different drug prices, and also different currencies. And all this needs to be included into one model, into one answer on the simple question, how much do skin diseases in Europe cost? And so we have done so and used a model deriving data mostly from a German large database that we constructed in our Hamburg Center of Health Economics. And this is always cross-controlled, cross-validated data, which include, just to give you an example, a lot of diagnoses, several hundreds, but also very rare diseases like acanthosis nigricans, just a few thousand in this country, so truly rare. But we know the prevalence as far as has been documented. We know the costs in hospital, the ambulant costs, the drug costs, the out-of-pocket expenses, and also many more. And they all contribute to a model or to a conclusion on the cost of skin diseases in Europe and Germany, which I show you here. And the overall monetary cost of skin diseases, in a very cautious, very conservative estimate, are more than 17 billion euros. And this includes the costs for drug treatment, from the cost for the patients themselves, the hospital costs, and especially indirect costs, those resulting from losses of productivity and the human resources. If we now relate this to the EU countries, not all, but European countries in the population of about 450 million, we can then adjust with all those factors I mentioned, and get to a total of, zoom this out for you, costs of the burden of skin diseases of almost 50 billion euros, including the direct payer costs, the direct costs for the patients who themselves have a burden of more than 12 billion euros, and the indirect costs, as I have shown. So a huge amount of monetary burden of skin diseases in Europe. So as cost drivers, if we now focus on the rare skin diseases, it's for sure that we have more than 2,500 distinct skin diseases. Most of them are really rare. And in total, these rare diseases are frequent again, because with so many rare diseases, they add up to a larger population. It's known in Europe that about 4 to 6% of the population suffer from a rare disease, which is more than 30 million people in Europe. The rare diseases induce, however, particularly high costs because of delayed diagnostics, often very complex syndromes with not just one, but several genetic defects. We have heard this impressively before. The missed early treatment, inefficient diagnostics and treatment. There's a lack of fitting treatment sometimes because of low market chances of the drugs. And the orphan drugs, which have been released and produced, they have high costs because of the low numbers per year. So this is the balance in Europe in terms of rare skin disease. And of course, there's also the question, what do we miss? What are the costs of the misdiagnosis and treatment? I just give you a scheme because we don't have very precise data on this, but it's for sure when over time we miss to intervene early in any chronic skin condition at this point where we could intervene, but we have just a late intervention, we on a regular basis have a range of higher morbidity and costs compared to a situation when we are able to control and intervene early. Especially the suffering over time is much higher when this early time point has been missed. So the risk of late intervention in rare diseases is the physical damage, the cumulative life course impairment, missed opportunity, the escalation of comorbidity and costs per se. So the goal is to try to avoid this accumulation of life course impairment from the patient perspective. This has been just put into a scheme, but later also measured here in this publication. You see year by year, there is an addition of burden, physical, psychological, stigma in the skin conditions, which may accumulate. But if we try to flatten the curve, to intervene early, to have better understanding of the condition, better treatment, then we avoid this accumulation over time. And this is something which is also the economic perspective on this, not just the humanistic. Now, the question, of course, is how can we measure the overall burden of rare skin diseases? For this, we would have to ask patients, the people who are affected, because we don't know if we are not in the situation of having such a disease. But there has been an initiative on a global level to try to anticipate the disease burden, asking normal people, but not those who were involved. And this has become the global burden of disease study and metrics. You have come across this. This has been published hundreds of times. And I have very serious concerns about this because all data here have been derived from normal people, normal persons in the society, and not those who are affected from the diseases that we're talking about. And in this metric, based on a special parameter, DELIS, skin conditions overall, though accounting for 2 billion people in the world, only are on place 18, far behind many other diseases, which of course are relevant, but not more relevant than skin conditions. And the reason for this underestimation of the skin conditions in the global disease burden metrics is that those disease weights, as I said, were derived from normal people. If you ask normal people about the burden of skin diseases, they don't know the real burden, as many in society don't know. And so as a result, the disease weights are low. And for example, the disease weight for psoriasis is much lower than for a pharyngitis. If a person has a pharyngitis once a year, which disappears after a few days, the disease weight here is higher than for this very burdensome long-term disease. And I can name you many of these results. Also, skin cancer is lower in disease weight than gout or pharyngitis. So we need to go beyond this because neither healthcare resources nor research funding should be allocated based on just the GBD data. But this happens. Some countries, some governments say, we follow this list, the ranking, and this is how we allocate our resources. This is wrong, and this is unfair to patients. This is why it was particularly important to have the GRID study that Jennifer Austin was already referring to, because this is the first, not just attempt, it's the first project driven by patients, organizations globally. And I'm really a proud part of this, just contributing to what the patient at the Global Alliance has conceptualized. And with this new metrics, we will surely also correct what now at the moment is not right in the global disease burden level. So coming back to the economics, we shouldn't forget on a European level, but worldwide, that there is a humanistic burden of skin diseases, which is dramatic, both in numbers, but also on a single patient level. But also there are innovations coming up which have shown to markedly increase quality of life and well-being. And you can anticipate when you see these pictures here of patients who have been cured due to modern technology. And access to such technology is something which is crucial in Europe and which creates value for money. So as a summary, skin diseases in Europe are frequent, burdensome, and economically relevant. Many skin diseases are not rare, but rarely diagnosed. This is another problem, that some people have something quite usual, like the HS we heard, hidradenitis suppurativa. It's considered and perceived rare because it's frequently overlooked, but it's not that rare. So we need specialists for this. We see the high need of healthcare. We see that better access to innovative healthcare will improve the value for money, and there's a huge economic potential also of prevention. What needs to be done? This is my last slide. From the economic perspective, we need to understand the humanistic burden of rare skin diseases, and we can measure them. We need to support the international networks promoting this for rare diseases. We need data-driven decisions based on also data from rare diseases, and registry research for this needs to be improved. We need more stringent coding, and ICD-11 has not been implemented in the countries, though being much better in terms of identifying rare diseases than ICD-10. We need value-based healthcare, enhancing support for those affected, and we need to improve connection also between community healthcare and specialist care by digital means. Otherwise, we keep in a situation where patients need to wait many, many years before they get the proper diagnosis and treatment. And finally, this deserves a call for action, and this will help to enforce activities as needed. With this, I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Augustin, for this valuable, nice lecture. And now I would like to ask Professor Sabine Emming. She was the former president of the ESDR. Please, Sabine, start your lecture. Sabine, you are muted.
Sorry. So thank you very much, Andrea, for the kind introduction, and good afternoon to everybody. So it's very nice. It's a great pleasure to be here, and it's actually my first time to participate in this European roundtable discussion. And I just found the previous lectures already very interesting, very insightful. So there will be maybe a little shift right now, because I'm also a practicing dermatologist here at the University of Cologne, but I'm also interested in molecular aspects of pathophysiology, of skin diseases. We try to address specific questions, and then maybe also to come up with new therapeutic approaches or suggestions. And I thought this is an opportunity maybe also to draw your attention basically to a spectrum of diseases, more than just a specific disease, and maybe also to have a particularly view on those spectrum of disease. And this comes basically from skin health in an aging society. And that is based also because here in Cologne, since several years now, we have a research focus also on aging. And this actually changed also my view on aging and how this research could impact and help also the skin community. Next slide, please. So this is just quickly to remind you, and these are numbers actually from Germany, the demographic changes. I think we all are aware of this, and we realize this, and that also already over the past years, I mean, our patients have changed in the hospital and also in our daily practice, and that certainly the aging process has a major impact on dermatology and our daily work. So basically now we are already at the range that we have that 1/3 of the population is over 65. And we know that which age we have defects in the barrier, we have an impairment of our immune surveillance, which results in autoimmune diseases, which we see at the skin, of course, cancer, however, also impaired and defective capabilities of skin regeneration, which then develop into chronic wounds. Next slide, please. So, yeah, also what I just, when you can just come back, what I just want to say is, so what is important to raise the awareness, I think in general also, that you need healthy aging basically requires healthy skin. Because what we know is that skin problems, barrier problems, can also have an effect on the systemic organism. So therefore, it is required that our skin stays healthy so that the overall organism can also age in a healthy fashion. Next slide, please. And that aging is potentially even, or might be, a druggable condition. That is actually one thought which was highlighted several years ago already, or which is highlighted and which is a goal and still a question in the research field. And as we just see here, I mean, there are several drugs that certainly do not target specific skin diseases, but they might target aging processes and thereby indirectly, of course, impact also healthy skin and healthy aging of skin. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So, and the question is whether that can be, no, just one back again, whether that can be used actually also for dermatology and for skin health. And there was actually the proposal of a very interesting study, very comprehensive. It was called TAME study, targeting aging with metformin. And I do not know whether meanwhile it has been started, but the idea was for long-term to observe volunteers taking metformin at low doses and then to see whether aging in different organs is declined and affected. And what was actually a pity that in this study, there was no dermatologist, there was no skin researcher. So I think that would have been, of course, very important also to include here, of course, dermatologists to be included basically in this comprehensive analysis and proposal of trial. So next slide, please. But so this is one thought how this could be, how aging and skin could be considered and also brought into a new context or relation. But certainly we also have very specific skin diseases in our daily practice that are a result from the aging process. So aging is actually the major risk factor for a decline of the regenerative capacity. And here I just highlighted some of those conditions which accompany us during the entire life, and which are all basically a result of decline of regenerative capacity. So as just said, so this can be perturbed scarring, and then in the elderly, it can be perturbed healing, and perturbed healing, of course, leads ultimately also to cancer. Next slide, please. And here I just highlighted some of those diseases which are, of course, which have a huge burden on the quality of life of those patients, and also on the economy, health economy. And Matthias Augustin actually would have actually the perfect numbers for this disease, and he has published this also. So either on chronic wounds, venous ulcers are associated with diabetes, or even on the other side, which are also misregulated healing situations, which is fibrosis, and which are sclerosing skin diseases. So which are also very little understood, and which I think which are also underrepresented in our investigations. And the result is also that we have very little therapies or even no therapies for those disease groups and patient groups. Next slide, please. So the problems can be manifold, and for time reasons, I do not want to go here into detail, but for example, chronic wounds, which are a huge clinical challenge from the side of the patient management. I mean, the organization of the patients, the diagnostic, the therapy is complex. And as just said, we do not have sufficient therapies, particularly also when we compare this, of course, to the great success of the other areas in inflammatory skin diseases or in skin cancer, where we had great success, but not in those areas. And on the other side, also in science and in the translation, the situation is complex. Basically, for example, we lack certain animal models, and also for the translation into the clinic, we definitely need further clinical and more trials to investigate novel therapies. Next slide, please. So the approach, or one approach that we, for example, choose in our group and over the past decades, is basically that we try to move from the molecular pathology, from the patient, basically into a systematic analysis using different technologies, modern technologies, and also preclinical models to basically come up then with ideas for translation, for new drug development, and to bring this, of course, then back to the patient. Next slide, please. So we were asked to add also a final slide on regional policy recommendation. So certainly to raise the awareness of these problems and also of these unresolved situations that we have in wound healing disorders. It can be chronic ulcers, scarring, or fibrosis. And then also to develop and establish specific funding strategies. So funding strategies has to be better, or the financial support in the clinic. For example, I mean, currently in Germany, there is no differences made. For example, if you have specific and sophisticated setups in your clinic, basically to take care of those patients, certain network structures, or whether you do not establish those. And I think that could be certainly also a great incentive for the clinicians to better organize these patient groups. Then we also, I think what we need is a better funding support for the clinical research, which is very poorly at the moment. There is no systematic funding support for clinical research in wound healing problems. Most support comes from pharma industry. And finally, the same is also true for basic research. Certainly, we have our specific funding, national funding groups and societies, but there are no major strategies or organized strategies for these areas, and I think which could help very much. So thank you very much for your attention. And actually, I also have to say that I have to leave you in a few minutes, and I hope this is acceptable for you. And I'm thankful for my colleagues from ESDR, which will stay on for the roundtable discussion. And if questions remain open, I'm happy to answer those later on. If you could just send me those maybe by email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sabine, for this nice data. And now I would like to ask Tina Taube. She's representing the European Federation of Pharmaceutical Industries and Associations.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for the for the introduction. Thank you very much for the invitation and to share some thoughts also from our and from industry perspective on unmet medical needs, and why we heard quite a lot about the mental burden, the economic burden in the disease area we're currently discussing. And we also heard a bit the need for further research development. I wish to share with you now a little bit more coming from the political debate, what is ongoing, because it might be of interest, hopefully, in a way, because all of this goes into, could we just move the slides, please? Thank you. Because all of this moves into how to support and how to incentivize further research and development when we think about the European Union. Next slide, please. So just a very technical one, and apologies for this, but what we currently discuss politically is the revision of the pharmaceutical legislation, which is more than 20 years old. And this consists of the general pharmaceutical legislation, the orphan regulation, which is relevant for dermatology as well as the pediatric regulation. And all of this, while a lot of background noise, thank you very much for muting yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
So why we have all of those legislative, could you just go back? Thank you. Why all of those legislations, yes, are there to regulate how products are authorized, how they're monitored, distributed, and manufactured. They also, on the other hand, are extremely important to set incentive and rewards to incentivize and to flourish an environment where more research and development can happen in Europe, meaning more investment is going into those areas. And two topics which are amongst other topics, obviously, which are relevant for our discussion today is on one side, of course, the orphan drug regulation discussion, but I wish to focus on another topic, which is clearly about the unmet medical need. So the Commission, next slide, please, proposed last year in April a definition in order to set up a common European definition for unmet medical need. And if you look at those criteria which are proposed, they should be applied in a cumulative way, meaning the product who should be eligible in order to meet the definition of unmet medical need has to be a life-threatening or seriously debilitating disease. In addition, if there is something available, yes or no, in the product, the disease we talk about has to be associated with remaining high morbidity or mortality. And if the product is used, it has to be results in meaningful reduction in disease morbidity and mortality. So this is the general definition proposed by the Commission. And there is also the idea, if we talk about orphan medicine or products or rare diseases, products to treat rare diseases, there is the idea to introduce a further criteria to meet a higher medical need in those areas, where we then talk about a major therapeutic advantage to be met in order to be eligible for further incentives, but also to further regulatory incentives being support like accelerated pathways. Next slide, please. So what we've done as FPR, we applied those criteria on all the products which got a marketing authorization from 2019 to 2022. And we differentiated between non-orphans or non-rare diseases and rare diseases because there are different ideas proposed by the Commission. And what we see that quite the minority of products would be eligible to meet all the criteria proposed by the Commission. We see quite a bit, maybe more value and benefits to those with smaller population than large ones, and that the Commission proposal, based on the analysis, and of course methodology can always be discussed, the value incremental innovation. Of course, there is quite a high uncertainty around the application of the definition. So why is this of interest? Because the higher the uncertainty is, the less we will see an investment in those areas. And if you think about dermatology, what we currently discuss in this webinar here today, there are large, and you know this better than I do, but there are large disease areas like psoriasis or atopic dermatitis, where it's not sure that they would be able to tick the box. And if we think about rare diseases or rare skin diseases, we also know that we have still work to do to understand how diseases do function, what are biomarkers, etc., etc. So more has to be done, not less, as it is proposed by the Commission. So next slide, please. So therefore, thinking about this really holistic discussion around unmet medical need, we as FP understand unmet medical need as a condition that is not adequately prevented, treated, or diagnosed by any authorized intervention, and therefore moving this conversation forward, which is now with the European Parliament as well as with the European Council, that we need to develop really a truly patient-centered definition on what does unmet medical need means. We should think more holistically about outcome measurements, and not just morbidity and mortality. Also, other measurements are important, like, for example, quality of life. But it's also important that all the relevant stakeholders, explicitly patients, are part of the definition of what does an unmet medical needs in their daily life. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tina. And now I would like to ask Clément Evrault, who is representing the European Parliament, the research services of the European Parliament.
Many thanks. Good afternoon, and many thanks again for the invitation. I will suggest to focus myself on the upstream step regarding indeed the question of how the EU research policy can help minimizing the gaps in health research and ultimately support the clinical communities in designing solutions for skin health. I would offer you 3 moments of reflection. First, I would like to explain to which extent, from an institutional point of view, the EU is aiming at minimizing the existence of the existence and impact of research gaps, including in health. Second, I would like to discuss your findings regarding the state of play of skin health under Horizon 2020 and on Horizon Europe, just for the sake as well of indicating positive upcoming trends. And last but not least, I would like also to discuss with you what might be the next step. Next step at short term, meaning in 24, and then at a longer term, meaning when it comes to preparing the next multi-annual financial framework of the Union after 2027. So let's turn back, if you agree with this, on the EU research policies and what are the institutional mechanisms used to minimize the existence of gap in research. So when it comes to health research, we have to keep in mind the fact that we have 2 legal grounds in the treaties. They prove very useful because on the one hand, we have the competency to support research in health as part of the overall EU research policy. I am here referring to Article 179 of the treaty, which objective is to develop the scientific and technological basis of the EU as a whole, but as well to promote the circulation of knowledge and the mobility of researchers. Second legal ground is Article 168 of the treaty on public health. And here we have a particular ground enabling the EU to act to promoting research into the causes, transmission, and prevention of the major health scourges. So adding those 2 legal grounds, we have indeed an institutional mechanism that allow us to, as a union, I would say, to minimize the existence of gap in our research strategy when it comes to health. Turning back to research policy between 21 and 27, the main policy intervention of the Union is the implementation of Horizon Europe, the 9th framework program for research and innovation. It represents 95.5 billion euro investment in 2018 prices. But from a relative point of view, it is important to keep in mind that it represents circa 10% of the public spending of research innovation across the different member states, meaning that he has the power to agglomerate, to federate the member state strategies, but not to offer an alternative to them. From this Horizon program, I would like to identify in particular 2 features that indeed ensure the reduction of gaps in research. The first feature is integrated approach to Horizon, which means that Horizon is funding any research activity from basic science to innovation on the market. When it comes to health research, it is specifically important in the sense that the EU is able to fund, let's say, Nobel Prize in health. It has been the case quite recently, but the Union is also able to fund major scientific equipment and as well the training of the new generation of researchers across all the discipline of clinical research. The second feature of Horizon Europe, which proved useful in reducing the existence of gap in our research agendas, is a co-design approach to the program, which means that the definition of the calls for funding rely on a strategic programming, which allows to align the investments of the EU priorities with the member state priorities and the views by the stakeholders. Just to give you an idea, during the preparation of the first strategic program for Horizon Europe between 21 to 24, which corresponds to the political mandate of the Commission von der Leyen, the Commission received more than 6,000 written responses from stakeholders that ultimately contributed to the creation of the research agenda in a way to accommodate all the communities active in research in Europe. I will now try to explain what does it mean when it comes to health research. So when it comes to health research, together with bottom-up projects that I explained a couple of seconds ago regarding basic science, we have as well 8 billion euros that have been ring-fenced to support collaborative transnational activities from 21 to 27, around 6 specific priorities that have been defined by the legislator in order to be holistic. So the first one is health throughout the life course. The second one is environmental and social health determinants, drivers, sorry. The third priority is about the non-communicable and rare diseases. The fourth community is then on the infectious diseases. The fifth priority is about tools and technologies for health and care. And the sixth priority is dedicated to the modernization of healthcare systems. What is important is to note that in addition to those 6 elements, the legislator in its Council Decision 21/764 of May 21 prescribes to the Commission the need to address areas of unmet clinical needs, such as rare or hard to treat diseases, meaning that Horizon Europe, when it comes to collaborative research, should be indeed able to be flexible enough to accommodate all our clinical research needs across Europe. Then I would like also to mention a last important feature of this program, which is only starting now to expand. It is international dimension of this program. Indeed, through association agreements, the EU is ensuring to its scientific communities the capacity to take part and get funded by third countries. When it comes to our clinical research, it concerns especially the NIH programs in the States, but it will concern as well now Canada program, which I'm not familiar with, and as well the UK activities. I would like now to switch to the second part of my presentation and just try to give a short state of play of skin health research under Horizon. So I would start to comment the findings of your discussion paper, noting that while such findings are clear, Nevertheless, the practical relevance might be uncertain. Uncertain for two reasons. First reason, I would like to stress that the budget screen is not super well defined, so it's not clear whether it concerns only the EU framework projects or whether it might as well include member state own programming in it. A second element of methodology that I think is necessary to discuss is the fact that one project might have positive impact on the disease without being labeled accordingly with the international classification of disease. And just to give you a taste of this methodological possibility, I would like to give a quotation of a 22 call for funding under Horizon Europe work program on the health section. So is aiming at developing effective therapies for rare diseases. And it reads, proposals should focus on groups of rare diseases with commonalities such as shared biological features, possibly within the same and or across different medical areas within the rare diseases landscape. So when you try to make comparisons in the EU funding, it is probably necessary to adopt a more precise granularity rather than just looking at the keywords in the call for funding. Just to go a step further, I would say that on the quantitative side, going on the Horizon dashboard, which is disclosing the implementation state of play of the EU investment in the field of research, one can find not less than more than 100 projects, including the keyword skin in their acronym, and associated with the framework program from FP6. So it started in 2006 to Horizon Europe today. And what is also more important when it comes to the future is that under CORDIS, so the databases which present concisely the result of the project funded by the framework program, we can already find 100 projects funded under Horizon that are expected to bring scientific results with keyword on skin being active. Which means that potentially the framework program has made more efforts on skin health than what is apparent at the first sight. Does it mean that it is satisfactory? No, because the question of readability is important. And this would give me the hook to my next point, saying that in addition to Horizon programming, there is as well the need from the Commission to provide guidance on such programming. And when it comes to the question of skin health, I would like to quote an important message conveyed in the 2020 communication of the Commission on the pharmaceutical strategy, which says that currently investment does not necessarily focus on the greatest unmet needs due to the absence of commercial interest or limitation of the science. We need to break silos so that various public authorities responsible work together. Now, I would like to highlight especially two promising trends in Horizon Europe programming that you might want to discuss later. Both those opportunities correspond to a set of instruments which are labeled as European partnerships. European partnerships are grants that the Union is giving not to a single consortium of beneficiary for a limited amount of time, but to a set of contracting partners that can be either industrial partners, either member state authorities, for the sake of making a specific specific technological development, and/or creating a pan-European scientific community on an emergent scientific needs. And when it comes to skin health, I have noted since 21 the adoption of two very relevant, even if not holistic, partnership. One partnership on the assessment of risk from chemicals, which might be more known through its acronym, which is PAC. I invite you to discover the annual work plan set up by PAC, which lists the investment by member state and the EU each year, with different, with several relevant occurrences of skin in their activities. Second partnership I would like to touch a word about is the upcoming partnership on rare diseases, which was open until 19 September 23, and which evaluation might come to an end in the next days, meaning that here we will know who will implement this partnership of 150 million euro for the next years. The first partnership I referred to on assessing the risk from chemical has been endowed with 200 million euro. So the advantage of this instrument is that it allows to create pan-European communities on a specific scientific discipline. And second, it offers as well the related community with good visibility on the funding opportunity over a couple of years. Now I will switch to my last part, what to do, what might be the next step when it comes to further promoting the question of skin health in Horizon Europe. My first advice would be to take part on an intensive basis in the activities that will lead the Commission to adopt a new strategic program for Horizon Europe from 25 to 27. Of course, it requires a new college to be appointed, but you can already take a look to the analysis document that has been adopted by the Directorate General of the Commission on Research Innovation, which provides evidence base that will be used to create this strategic plan. And you will note that skin health has been referred as a need associated with improvement of health conditions at work. Second element of interest in the next future, it will be the implementation of the European Health Data Space, because it might, as soon as the Council and the Parliament will be in a position to make a political agreement over the file, it might offer you additional data to refine your models, including your economic models. Then, at a later stage, when it comes to the investment of the EU following 2027, so the preparation of the next framework program here, it might be interesting for you at the skin health community to reflect with the Commission on and with the co-legislators of the Union on the opportunity to include health skin as a keyword in the text of law, just to facilitate then your research and training efforts. Many thanks for the attention.
Yeah, thank you very much. This was very useful, and now I think we are ready for the questions and answers section, and I will handle it to Gordon.
Thanks a lot, everyone, for these absolutely outstanding talks from every angle and every stakeholder. So that was really a great insight from patients, but also up to the political point of view. I'll open this question right away also for everyone, for the audience, because we're already running a bit late. But I'll nevertheless start with the first question from maybe from our side, from a facilitator side. Karen was starting with that her personal history had a huge diagnostic delay that took forever to be diagnosed. I mean, that's horrible as from a dermatological point of view. But we know that this diagnostic delay have a huge impact on the burden of disease, but also, as we heard from Matthias Augustin, that it might actually negatively impact the disease course, as we do not have the option of early intervention, the costs increase, and so on. So maybe questions to Karin, but also to Jennifer and obviously Matthias, but also the others if they want to weigh in. How can we use this knowledge, maybe also from GRID, to actually raise awareness, maybe potentially raise funding to improve the understanding of these rare skin diseases? And maybe Karin wants to start because it's her personal story with the Netherton syndrome.
Thank you, Gordon, for asking this question. I think it's all on raising awareness about these rare skin diseases and being visible, being more visible. Maybe we should make some videos and really talk about our burden and share personal stories. I think that's the first step. And also ask people what are their needs and what are their unmet needs. Would also raise more awareness, I think.
I think, sharing the stories. I mean, there was also, I think, about 6-7 people asked for sharing the slides. So there is certainly interest for these stories and the impact all these diseases have on you. Maybe Jennifer or Matthias, do you want to weigh in on these points?
I'm happy to make a comment. I mean, I mentioned this during my presentation that the patient stories can be illustrated by data, and that's why the GRID project is unique, because it's data that is using a measure developed by patients, asking the relevant questions to patients to be able to quantify the impact of their diseases. And I mentioned that we completed the study in December, so we are sifting through huge amounts of data, and out of that data are going to be incredible stories that we can tell about the broader patient experience. And we can do that by region, including for across Europe or in specific terms in the EU. And we can then take that information and use it to tell that story to policy and decision makers. And that's really been why we have pursued this patient-led research all along, because our patient organizations have always told us that they need data to be taken seriously, that they can tell their stories, but without the data, the decision makers don't really know how to handle that information that doesn't fit into their decision-making rubrics. So if we're able to provide that data to our patient organizations and work with them in telling that story, then we can be asking for more investment in research and more investment in healthcare supports. Certainly that could include mental health. As we've learned, that is such a huge quantifiable impact on patients.
I completely agree, and there's just as I want to ask questions, actually also a comment from the chat in that regard. I mean, it is absolutely outstanding and important to share our stories, or your stories, much more important than from a medical point of view. But how can we achieve that it is, reaching the ones funding the research? And I think you've done a first step with the GRID study together with Chris Bundy and Matthias Augustin. Maybe you and Matthias can address a little bit that question. I mean, Matthias was talking about that they were actually in front of the European Union a few weeks ago. But maybe Matthias or you can weigh in, and then I can hand back to Karen, who wants to,
Yes, thank you, Corinne. You raised two important questions. One is what can we do to get earlier intervention and avoid suffering of people from rare skin diseases? This was the starting point. And second, this also refers to the question, where do we have the most urgent need? Is it in research? Is it in awareness? Is it in the proper care? And I think the answer is a multifold one. If we start with this challenge that we heard from Karen also, people with rare diseases are sometimes not taken for serious. The suffering of people is not taken serious, and derms and other specialties may not know the disease. So we need to connect the community level of healthcare with the expert level. This is something which requires a program, which requires active measures, like also digital means, that anybody with a rare disease is connected, his GP as well, or his primary dermatologist, with the best experts. And this can be done. We can get help of AI-based first recognition level, but it's for sure that we cannot accept that it takes 9 years, 12 years, 15 years until a rare disease is diagnosed and then treatment starts. So I think we need to move on with this. And the second point is connected with this. We cannot accept that people are suffering. I think this is something which even in our society now is not common, not even to us physicians. We cannot say just it is like this. This is a disease you have to live with. This is something with this genetic, we can't change anything. This is an attitude which we see all over. And this is something we need to change on all levels, to be ambitious. And we all, being physicians here, I see several like Erwin Schachler also, we are so ambitious to move forward and help patients. And I think this attitude is something we also need to promote, besides of the technical ways of improving the knowledge and quality of healthcare.
I agree. Maybe just coming back to the questions that came from the audience, and then I'll hand over to Karin and Isabel, who has also a question or a comment. But how do you assure that these voices are heard? And I agree. We need more funding and we need more knowledge in that regard. But first of all, how is it heard, and how can actually funding actually make sense, or even benefit the healthcare system per se, benefit from additional funding in dermatological research?
Mm-hmm. So if you stay with me asking this specific question, I think this has to do with the addressing of the information that we have. There's so much we know, but the right people need to know it at the right time. And this is where we need politics. We need support but on the European level to address this by simple repeating messages in multiple channels, and then also enable patients, being the most credible voices, to talk to the politicians as we do now. But more needs to be done on this level, I think.
Thanks. Karin wanted to mention something.
Yes, I think that each and every disease should need a core outcome set to give more focus to research. Just like Jennifer said, we need data, and data we can gather on diseases that have really defined their own goals, their own needs, their own outcomes. I think this is really important.
Yeah. And Isabel, before I hand over to Ellie, because he wanted to make a comment as well.
Hello, thank you very much, and congratulations for gathering us together today to discuss about these things. I have a question addressed to Mr. Clément. Thank you very much for your presentation. And it is about the European long-term care strategy. So you have presented to us about more the research funding going to innovation, whether it is new treatments, new digitalization, but what about care pathways? The European Union is looking now at, for example, how to manage sick leave together with a society that is able to perform and that participates in the economy. So how do we have opportunities there as a community on rare diseases, or from my perspective on chronic skin diseases, so that all this burden that has been underlying in the discussion today, whether it is on the person's life or the family, the role of caregivers, is also looked at, because at the moment we might have a different advance or not on how we manage these diseases from diagnosis to treatment. So that's my question. And if I can bring an example of the difficulties that in general we at IFA encounter to put skin diseases on the table, is that probably there has been this initiative called the Healthier Together initiative, that is the counterpart to the beating cancer plan. So all non-communicable diseases apart from cancer. And I can tell you from MIFA, we tried very hard to have a skin, so atopic dermatitis recognized in that document. And it was just put aside. It has not been included. So we also see that apart from the interest that there might be in proposing solutions to the patients that unfortunately are diagnosed with this, there is lack of willingness to even put it in a document that it does not lead to funding. So if you could also comment on this experience that we have, the feedback that we've had, and thank you very much for the opportunity.
Just maybe excellent question, but just try to the question and the answer to keep it a bit short because we're running a little bit out of time with the excellent talk. So please also, Clément, if you can keep it in a few minutes so we can answer all the questions that are coming in. Thanks a lot.
Well understood. Many thanks for the question. I would like to apologize for not being as much an expert as I would like to of health conditions, meaning that I am dealing with here the EU strategy in terms of research as a whole, and I can only regret with you that not every health condition has been associated in our law with research pathways that would encompass an holistic approach. So it is something that you might want to discuss with the EU co-legislators for sure, but as well with member state authorities, just for the sake of enabling the EU to come up with holistic approaches to diseases. On the example of the mission cancer, for example. Many thanks.
Thanks a lot. Eli, you wanted to say something, so I'll just hand over to you.
Maybe just a brief remark, but I just listened very carefully to all the wonderful talks, and I was a bit. I would like maybe to make a remark, which I hope will not be that too much provocative, but I think that when we listen to all of our talks, we are actually assuming the fact that the way we look at diseases today, the way we diagnose diseases today, the way we treat diseases today will be the way we are going to continue to manage those diseases within the next 5 years. And I think that we are maybe missing something, and this is perhaps surprising because the revolution is really happening first and foremost among skin diseases in dermatology. How do we diagnose and how do we treat a disease usually? So we have a patient. The patient presents with a constellation of signs. We take a medical history, we do a physical examination, we ask for some, we do maybe a biopsy, we take some pathology, ancillary test, and then we do a synthesis of all this, and we come up with a diagnosis, and we derive from the diagnosis the treatment, which is usually given to a specific diagnosis according to guidelines or things like that. But we know that this old way to practice medicine is now on its way out. And what is actually coming up is the fact that we are no longer looking at diseases, whether rare or common, according to their morphological appearance, but according to their underlying molecular pathogenesis. And this is something which is happening everywhere, started in oncology, is overwhelming now in dermatology, and is going to change the way we are going to practice medicine. Now, why do I think this is something important, because the major reason we are all together today is to try to understand why is research in skin diseases so important? Why do we need, how can we convince the EU and other funding agencies that skin research is really a priority? It is because of the fact that skin diseases are usually and more than other diseases amenable to this new process. You can take easily a skin biopsy and define the molecular pathogenesis underlying a certain morphology. And then you don't care anymore whether this is atopic dermatitis or psoriasis or no matter what. The only thing which is really important is what is driving the diseases. In inflammatory diseases, is this a Th17-driven disease, a Th2-driven diseases, and you don't care anymore about the clinical features or the underlying pathology. Of course, I'm exaggerating and bringing up maybe a too caricatural picture of what is happening, but this is really where we are going. And this is why funding in skin research is actually something which should be viewed as a priority by the EU and other funding agencies. I'm not exactly sure that the revolution that is really happening now in dermatology, especially in the context of inflammatory skin diseases, but the same goes true also for rare genetic skin diseases, is already very well established in dermato-oncology. Even so, in all these different fields, I'm not sure that the authorities are well aware enough of the fact that dermatology is actually the field where the next medicine is nowadays being born. And this is something which actually should provide an impetus for funding more skin research, not because of the skin diseases, but actually because this is the way most of our medical practice will go, no matter if the medicine is addressing skin diseases or other diseases. And I think that this special angle should be maybe more strongly emphasized, especially if we are going to try to put together a kind of a white paper at the end of this meeting. So this is something which really should be emphasized. Skin research is not only important for skin diseases, it is important for medicine in general. So that was
maybe just a follow-up question on that one, Eli, but I just have to comment because I'm a patient myself right now. I have to leave sneak out a little early for a doctoral appointment myself. So I'll hand over to Eli and Andrea to facilitate the remaining for a few minutes. But just maybe a follow-up question on that before Helen can make her comment. What about in general that to have dermatological research as a surrogate sort of disease or surrogate research, not surrogate disease, but surrogate research for medicine in general? I mean, it's much more accessible. It seems to be cost-effective. I mean, also Sabine was talking about longevity and skin aging, and so it wouldn't make sense to have actually skin research being like the proof of principle research for the entire medical field. So I'll let you reply to that, and hopefully open up with a question, and then hand over to Andrea and you to facilitate. And thanks everyone for joining. It was absolutely outstanding.
Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you very much.
And if I may continue on this topic where Ellie just finished, the funding. So there is a very nice question in the chat by Isabel Davis, and she's asking about how can we focus this funding, because there are so many different diseases. How can we set the criteria for allocating research funding? Whether the GRID study can help us to prioritize the fundings, or what is your opinion about this? And I would like to ask this question from Professor Augustine and also from Jennifer. Maybe Ellie or Professor Chuckler, who is also with us, can say some words about how to focus the funding, which type of diseases, how can we pick them out?
I agree with you that we need to focus for obvious reasons, and the decision, however, should be a shared decision. Also, patients should be involved when it comes to the prioritization. Second, I think we need to join forces. There shouldn't be independent research projects, but they should be connected. This happens on many levels, and the ESDR is also a guarantee for this, that research collaboration works. This is more efficient than single projects. Third, it's for sure that we should not focus on single entities, and Dr. Sprecher already mentioned this. We develop a different understanding of what single diseases mean, and we can connect some principles of mechanisms of pathogenesis across indications with which we until now thought are independent. So also join forces on this level and then gain extra synergies.
Yes, maybe Jennifer, and then Ellie and Professor Chuckler.
Well, I think what Matthias has said makes a lot of sense. I think what I would add is that we have data, researchers have various types of data, and so do patient organizations. If we can work to cooperate on a more interactive basis, we can start to set research priorities together. And yes, it's hard. There's so many skin diseases. How do you decide which ones receive the funding that might be out there? But I think part of it is about the will to work together on research. And so who are the people that are out there that are already connected with patients, that are motivated to participate in research? And the patient organizations know who those people are, and have the insights to help in the design of research that will achieve objectives. So I think trying to build the connection between the dermatology research community and the dermatology patient community is really important, so that there can be that collaboration. And I think that our GRID project is a really great example of how well that can work, where we're working with researchers like Matthias, but also with our patient community, because we know that one of the challenges in research is finding the patients to participate. And I think that that's one of the huge value propositions that patient organizations bring to the equation, and in helping to design research that makes sense to patients, where they are able and willing to contribute their experiences.
Thanks. Ellie, please, and then Arvin Chakla.
Yes, just as a kind of a follow-up of what I already said, I'm not exactly sure that we need to prioritize funding by diseases or disease categories even. I think that I mean, the best way to make the case for promoting funding of skin research in general is to emphasize the fact that the skin is really a model for almost any kind of other disease, which can be addressed experimentally or clinically, only in a much more complex way. The skin is visible, is accessible. Skin biopsies can be obtained almost as much as we want. Think of a brain disease. How can a brain biopsy be obtained from a human patient? It's almost impossible to do it. In dermatology, we can obtain skin biopsies on a longitudinal basis along the course of a disease. We can also, of course, address using new technologies like single-cell RNA-seq. We can address the very, very deep molecular basis of human disease. And there is not much of a difference, and everybody knows already about that, between the type of processes which are happening in the skin, for example, in the context of psoriasis, and what you see in the intestinal epithelia during an outburst of Crohn's disease. And there are, of course, differences, but there are also a lot of similarities. And everybody knows, of course, that there is a lot of overlap also in the type of treatments which are effective in skin diseases and non-skin disease. And this is actually also a proof for the fact that the skin can be a model for almost every disease. And I think that, of course, putting forward the fact that there is a significant burden of skin disease is very important, but what is more important than that, in my opinion, and should be also considered from a scientific and an economical point of view also as more important by policymakers, is the fact that that skin research will not only fuel skin research, but also fuel research in other fields, and thereby improve health, generally speaking, and not only the health of skin disease patients. I think this is really the most important point when we try to promote skin research among policymakers.
Thank you. And as we are running out of time, I would like to give the word to Erwin Chakler first, and then to Helen Wheel. And then I think then we will close our webinar for today. But I would like to give the word to Erwin.
Thank you very much, Andrea. I followed with real interest this discussion, which is ongoing, and I don't have any advice to specific topics on that. But what I would advise to is that you together write a white paper and publish it I'm saying this because I'm the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Investigative Dermatology, and I think it would be very well placed there as a kind of either white paper or a series of commentaries, because then you have something to show to the policymakers in, if you want, hard copy. Of course, spreading the word over the internet is also helpful, but still the printed word might have a stronger weight. So this invitation, if you want, does not refer only to the researchers amongst us or to the doctors amongst us, but of course also to the patient groups. So if there is the need, and I think there is this need, to alert the public and policymakers to this topic and this problem, you are really invited to write such a commentary or a series of commentary for the Journal of Investigative Dermatology, which has an international reach. And you always can use my name if you need some information, some more information of it. Just write to me. I'm all over the internet with my email. Thank you.
Thanks for this kind opportunity. And Helen, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I feel a little bit silly, to be honest, but in honesty, we have a big group of rare patients organisations here. How can we, right now, improve the accuracy of diagnosis for our rare diseases? One of the things that we do with my organisation at the moment, we put together galleries of images, we put together care recommendations, example images, example stories, and we share them with dermatologists. That's the only way that I feel that I can do that right now, to try and improve things, because I have this feeling that we have within our support group, we get a number of people who are still misdiagnosed, who come to us because they found it through Facebook or through the internet. And when you look at it, it's a clear case of this particular disease. How can we improve diagnosis? How can we help make sure that people aren't left for years and years with the wrong diagnosis? What advice would you offer? What strategies do we have in place already?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I also read in the chat that there are some questions to Sabine Emming, but please, those who wanted to ask from Sabine, please send her the questions in email, as she offered that she will answer to these emails. And finally, I just would like to summarize with some sentences today's roundtable. I think it was very, very emotional and very useful, and it was very interesting to hear the opinions and to hear the data also from experts, from dermatologists, from scientists, from the patients, from their representatives, and also it was interesting to hear data from the industry partners, and of course also from the policymakers. And we could realize that we have a great opportunity, but also we have a great job in front of us. We have to start on this road. We have to work together. Everyone pronounced the importance of the networking, and we have to know much more about our patients and about their diseases. And of course, we need more funding. But this funding is just a tool. We need this for our science, and we need this to make better the understanding of the diseases and to make the life of our patients better. So, and we thank for the GlobalSkin for organizing this roundtable. And finally, I would like to give the word back to Yalcin.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you to all of you. I would like to thank all of you for your time and your contributions. I would also like to thank ESDR and GlobalSkin staff for their time and efforts to make this event a success. I know that there are many questions and remarks and comments, and unfortunately, we only have limited time. And I wish to all of you very good rest of your day, and goodbye.